What do Georgia Miller, An Onion, and The Great Gatsby have in common? Welcome back to A Girl Secrets. Today we're diving deep into the mindset behind the iconic character Georgia Miller from the show Ginny and Georgia. Before we begin, I have to admit Georgia is morally gray. This video isn't about whether she's a good person. What we're looking at is the psychology of a mastermind, and Georgia is one of the most perfect and complex examples of that. Looking at this character, one of the biggest things I noticed is that she is, like I mentioned, an onion. With Georgia, there aren't simple rules to her charm or her power. Each layer builds on the next. Today, we're peeling back every single one. Her charm, her strategy, all the way to the very core of what makes her unstoppable. And answering a curious question, what does Georgia Miller, a teenage mom turned criminal mastermind, have in common with Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby? So let's dive in, starting with her charm layers. Georgia, born Mary Riley, comes from one of the toughest backgrounds. Growing up, she was abused by her stepfather. She ran away from home and spent a large portion of her teenage years homeless. She also got pregnant at a young age and had to deal with being a teenage mom with no money, no support, and later an abusive boyfriend. Yet despite all of this, Georgia still comes out on top. She reinvents herself, climbs the social ladder, survives situations that should have destroyed her, and she develops unshakable charisma. She magnetizes everyone around her. Even we, the audience, deeply admire her despite the fact that she's a serial murderer. So how does she cultivate this irresistible charm? Layer 1 of Georgia's charm starts with her tapping into a deep psychological truth. Hidden in the first half of the quote that becomes her life motto: "You catch more flies with honey, but if you get yourself a bee, sting first." Georgia adapts a bubbly Southern belle persona. She's sweet, she has a warm, charming Southern accent, and affectionately calls everyone Peach. What does this do? Well, it works with a psychological rule that people like people who make them feel good about themselves. Her lively energy, compliments, and nicknames tap right into that, but she takes it even further. She knows emotions are contagious, and her energy transfers onto people around her, making them feel good and making them want to keep coming back. You could probably agree that you often crave Georgia on your screen, but that might be for a much deeper reason. Remember, she has layers, and the second layer makes her magnetism even more powerful. See, Georgia is a mother of two. She has a sweet Southern accent, blonde hair, and dresses in a very elegant and feminine way, yet she fully contradicts the stereotypical image of a mom. Compare her to someone like Ellen, Maxine's mother. Georgia walks around throwing out phrases like, "We're like Gilmore Girls, but with bigger boobs." Casually asks her daughter's boyfriend Marcus for a smoke. And she's also a criminal mastermind who got away with murder, who framed her ex, eliminated her first husband, and poisoned her second. Yet this dangerous criminal often produces phrases like,
They don't know that we know they know we know. Welcome to adulthood. It sucks.
Georgia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, bad Ginny.
creating a silliness you would not expect from a serial killer. This isn't about whether her actions are right, it's about how these qualities contradict each other, making Georgia an enigma. And contradiction is psychologically powerful. Here's the deal. Most of our days are spent on autopilot. Our brains rely on shortcuts called heuristics and mental categories called schemas to save energy. That's why you don't have to actively think about how you brush your teeth, drive on familiar roads, or recognize basic social norms. Schemas are like mental boxes for what things should look like. A dog schema, for example, might be furry, four legs, barks, wet nose. But when it comes to a mother schema, or even a criminal schema, Georgia doesn't neatly fit either one. And when we encounter something that breaks our mental pattern, we have to pay conscious attention, snapping us out of the autopilot and making things feel fresh. That's why enigma characters like Georgia Miller are are so attractive and memorable. I talk about this more in my feminine seduction archetypes video, which brings us to the next layer of Georgia's allure, one of the strongest ones, her seduction archetype. Georgia is a charismatic seduction archetype. Throughout the show, Ginny constantly mentions how Georgia is always in control, how she never looks uncertain about anything. This is deeply magnetic because it taps into a core human need, certainty. All of us crave certainty. We want stability, we want someone to light the path. That's why self-help books and advice influencers are so popular. This is especially magnetic to people who feel confused or lost like Ginny. She sees Georgia as a force. She constantly listens to her, remembers what she says, and even shares her worldview through the opening monologues of each episode. But this is just the first layer that connects to her strategy. And this character is so deeply strategic that some of her moves genuinely align with what some former CIA agents describe in their recruitment and influence training. And there's one scene that perfectly captures all four of Georgia's strategic layers. Pay attention, because in the next 30 seconds, you'll see Georgia use her four tactics that are on the surface really hard to notice. Let's go back to season 1.
Oh, so clumsy.
Are you okay?
Georgia.
Paul Randolph, mayor. Sorry, I've forgotten how to introduce myself like a human. Let me start over.
Okay, now let's see if you actually caught all four. The first layer anchors into one of Georgia's iconic quotes. Life is a game, and if you're not playing, you're the one getting played. Georgia was not at the cafe by accident. When Georgia moves to Wellsbury, she doesn't gossip with her neighbors or chat up Joe, the cafe owner, just for fun. She is gathering intel. She figures out who calls the shots, who's the mayor, where he eats, and what Joe's business model is. She listens more than she talks, and unlike most people who zone out and wait for their turn to speak, she analyzes, stores, and connects the information. Why? Because if you have a goal, you need to understand the board you're playing on. Georgia wants to work in the mayor's office, so she studies the mayor. Notice in the scene where Paul talks about how Joe runs his cafe by hiring a bunch of interns to maximize profits, Georgia isn't just pretending to listen to make Paul feel good about himself or flirt with him. She extracts something crucial. Paul values optimizing for profit, power, and smart resource management. He wants to spend the least to get the most amount of money. So when she later tells him, if you give me lemons, I can make you lemon pie, lemon bars, and a delicious lemon tart, she's tapping right into his desire, positioning herself as the type of assets that he values. And it's not just in the scene. She does the same thing with the judge in season 3. She gathers information about him, studies what matters to him, then presses the right buttons. A subtle compliment, a shared value about family, an appeal to responsibility and status, and she charms her way into bail. Now, yes, that scene may not be the most accurate representation of how things go in the courtroom, but the principle that it shows stands everywhere. Know your environment, know who you're speaking to, and know what motivates them. Though the scene of how she meets the mayor hides another genius, or dare I say even more genius layer that allows her to get what she wants with ease. Because Georgia does not walk up to Paul and ask to speak with him. She does something way smarter. She puts on the iconic pink dress, she sits at his favorite cafe, and when Paul walks in, she accidentally bumps into him, making him drop his lunch. Now, this scene gets even better, but hold your horses, because the key is, he bumped into her. He approached her. Georgia sets everything up so she's not begging in front of the town hall front door. He finds her himself. And this is a pattern. She doesn't run after what she wants. She positions herself as attractive to it and then places herself in its path. This tendency of hers mirrors a supposed CIA training tactic, where an agent must get someone to buy them a cup of coffee without directly asking, because asking creates resistance. But the scene doesn't stop there. chair. Immediately after, she introduces herself and insists on replacing his lunch. In fact, they can have it together. She confidently calls out to Joe to make the mayor's usual. Here hides a quality that Georgia displays a lot. She assumes that she's welcome without really waiting or hesitating for anyone's reassurance. And that assumption of belonging makes other people question her less. Now we're at the last layer hidden in this scene that most people don't like to hear, but I promise you, if you don't choose to look the other way, you can too tap into its power. And it's in her dress, her hair, her light pink makeup. Georgia knows the power of the face card. Quote, for a woman, life is a battle and beauty is the goddamn machine gun. She uses beauty as her weapon because whether we like it or not, pretty privilege is real. And there's even a documented psychological bias called what is beautiful is good effect, where attractive people are subconsciously assumed to be more intelligent, kind, or trustworthy. Georgia knows this really well. That's why even in prison, she makes a lip tint out of candy, curls her hair with a toilet roll, and smudges pencil into eyeliner to go for her first court hearing. Afterwards, we also see her sporting extravagant outfits to her hearings, which brings us into a deeper layer, which is that her outfits, her accent, and her larger-than-life energy create an illusion of grandeur. She does this to grab people's attention, appear more powerful, and distract from her background, because this visual greatness keeps people's eyes focused on it, so they don't look closely at her past, her doubts, or the poverty that she came from. And now we're getting to the core of Georgia Miller. With all the outer layers revealed, what are the two forces that make her unstoppable? And what exactly makes her so similar to one of the most famous literary characters of all time, Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby? The first component of her core is something that Georgia has that most of us lack, which is, to Georgia, the sky is her limit. She genuinely does not think anything is impossible. She wants to be rich despite her background, she goes for it. She wants to work in town politics, she goes for that as well. She wants to marry the mayor, she also goes for it. She doesn't think even for a second, is this realistic? Maybe I can't do it, or is my goal too high? No, she thinks, how do I make it happen? Because here's the truth, what you don't dare to go for, you will never get. Most of us waste our energy calculating why something isn't gonna work, listing reasons why it's unlikely, and convincing ourselves it's not for us. But what if we put that same energy into strategy instead of doubt? Nothing is impossible. Some things have a lower probability, but not zero. And the moment you try, you increase your chances. I bet you've heard those stories on TikTok of people getting jobs they didn't even have the requirements for, or people who are not celebrities getting into celebrity parties just by being delusional. I've had moments like that myself. When I was a sophomore in college, I applied to be an English teacher at a company that required a certificate and preferably a degree. I had neither, but I applied anyway, got the interview, and acted like I belonged there. And the interviewer made an exception. And that wasn't the only time. I've taken advanced classes without having the prerequisites, enrolled in more APs than my high school had allowed, and secured a scholarship past deadline to a prestigious private high school. The point is, when you stop trying to come up with all the reasons why something couldn't happen and start trying with confidence, you get more than you ever thought was possible. And this is something Georgia knows very well. But here's the second core, without which the first one might not always work. It hides in this quote of hers, never look backwards, only forward. Georgia keeps going, despite her past, despite people's opinions, and no matter what happens. After the dinner with Paul's family, she overhears them talking horrible things about her. It hurts her, you can see that in her face, but she doesn't let it stop her. When almost everyone turns against her in season 3, when she's arrested, when her illusion is starting to crack and her children are even taken away, she still strategizes and she still fights. No one's opinion and no past experience has the right to stand between you and the life that you deserve. The past is gone, we're not going backwards, only forward. This makes her truly unstoppable. But here's another quality, one that can either save her or become quite dangerous. Ginny says her whole life she's been making dresses out of curtains. Ginny never felt like they were lacking growing up. If there was no food for Christmas, Georgia reframed it as a whipped cream Christmas. She is the master of turning rocks into gemstones. She calls it glitter magic. magic. If you sprinkle a little glitter on something, no one sees the ugly underneath. Yes, a part of this is an illusion and connects back to what we talked about with grandeur, but it is also her resourcefulness. Georgia is the master of shifting perspective. She can take something bad and spin it in a way that makes it appealing, while most people do the opposite. They take something good and search for the flaw. Georgia searches for glitter, and this allows her to pull herself through the hardest times. Now, what does Georgia Miller, a teenage mom turned criminal mastermind, have in common with Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby? And are there similarities just in their power play, or could Georgia be headed towards the same tragic ending? Let's look at their stories. Georgia Miller was born Mary Riley and grew up in poverty. Gatsby wasn't born Gatsby either. He was James Gatz, the son of poor farmers. Both of them created new identities. James became Jay Gatsby, wealthy, refined, Oxford-educated man and a part of the elite, while Mary became Georgia, a charming Southern belle, polished and socially powerful. Both adopted certain accents and sayings to reinforce their identities. Georgia calls people peach, while Gatsby calls everyone old sport. While Georgia used her outfits to create an illusion of grandeur, Gatsby too dressed lavishly, drove a custom yellow car, and threw outrageous parties to create an illusion of greatness that didn't let people see past it to his background. And just like no one knew Georgia's true story, no one knew who Gatsby really was either. Both characters displayed intense self-belief and determination, and yes, both built their wealth through illegal means. Georgia to me really feels like a modern-day female Gatsby, but does that mean she's heading for the same tragic fate? Gatsby had one fatal flaw that accumulates with him meeting an unfortunate ending by the end of his story. He loved Daisy and did everything in the name of love. He did not think he deserved her without his wealth, so he became rich, bought a mansion across the bay from her, threw extravagant parties to lure her in. The problem? Daisy didn't love him the same, tended to choose the easy way out, and was married to another man. The characters do meet in the movie, have an affair, but when Gatsby asks her to leave her husband and say that she never loved anyone but him, Daisy can't do it. He eventually ends up taking the blame for a crime she commits and meeting an unfortunate ending, all in the name of love, who has never cared as much about him as he cared about her. His tragedy? He tried to change the feelings of the one he loved, thinking he knew better what was best for her. Now, in the book, there's also way more layers, but this is the one that he shares with Georgia. Georgia too thinks that she knows best for the ones that she loves, trying to scare Marcus away from Ginny as she thinks he's a bad influence, frame her English teacher, and get rid of Cynthia's husband as she thinks he's a burden for her, which all lead her to season 3 where all of her actions implode. And for the first time, she's forced to confront the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she doesn't always know best. Gatsby's tragedy was his inability to let go of control and face the truth. Georgia is now standing at the same crossroads. Her future depends on one question: can she love the people closest to her without controlling them? If she can't, then yes, she's just Gatsby in better heels. Let me know what you think. Is Georgia headed for redemption in season 4, or is she doomed to repeat the same pattern? And while in this video we talked about Georgia's feminine seduction archetype, there are way more that can help you unlock your irresistible allure. All of them have their own magnetism that is based in psychology. If you want to know what yours is, then check out this video right here. And I'm so tired of talking at this point. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, and let me know who your favorite character from Ginny and Georgia is, because I'm so curious. Mine is definitely Marcus, and I think I can also relate the most to Maxine. But who's your favorite character, and who can you relate to the most?